Right, come here, Fenton. Here. Come here, chill out. This particular pig is not a pig, okay? Super serial right now. This is Fenton. And as such, this is where our story time will commence. You go run off, Fenton, while I tell them about your story. Okay, here we go. So, you want to know the story of Fenton, eh? Let me tell you a story. Here we go. Most people believe Fenton to be just a pig. You even hear it from time to time from different streamers. He's just a pig, but he's not a pig. This pig is a story, and I will tell you that story today. It starts like any other day on the Sea of Thieves, outside the trades and the merchants. Now, our pig was not always in his pig-like form. Nay, Fenton is his nickname. His real name is Fentidimus, and he is in fact the son of Poseidon. But how did Fentidimus become Fenton, and how did he become a pig? That's the story I'm about to tell you. As such, Fentidimus was curious in nature. He was a demigod after all. His father, the king of the sea, Poseidon. His mother, never been told her whereabouts, but knows that she was human. And as such, that's where our story begins. Fentidimus had grown to the age of ripe 18, and he was curious about his surroundings. He knew one day that he would possibly be king, but his dad was kind of tyrannical. He never let him leave the palace borders. He never let him go to the surface. He said it was too dangerous. One day, he sneaks away from the palace guards unnoticed and goes to the nearest outposts and docks. At first, he would lay in lieu in the water, just watching, picking up on the curious, peculiar nature in which the landlubbers would do business and talk. Some had missing legs, some had missing arms. It didn't stop them from being agile and mobile, and they would row up on these big, giant vessels called ships. This would go on for weeks, until one day he conjures up the courage to go ashore. Now, at this point in our story, there happened to be a young, feisty captain of the female nature. She would have her own notoriety to be had, and I will expel her name shortly. Now, Fenton had changed his appearance. He changed from having the merfolk's typical tail to having legs, but his eyes were as dark as the sea. Now, as such, he made sure that he would grow accustomed to the area around him. He found himself a clothesline with some peculiar clothes and put them on. As such, he goes ahead and puts on the clothes and inspects the docks. And as he does, he snops at this faint aroma. It was beautiful. Now, we all know that merfolk have an acute sense of smell. And in this particular nature, Fentidimus was drawn to the smell of something known as fruit, but only one in particular. It would be a pineapple. And as such, this particular pineapple was coming from a naval ship, flying Skull and Bones. And he would sit there, just taking in all the aroma. And a young fair maiden would come across the ship. She clearly had a presence among the crew. One might even say she was captain. As such, he followed the lady as she carried the pineapples to the trading area. She would keep a few for herself and make forward to the nearest tavern. He would follow still. The aroma wasn't just the pineapples at this point. It was the fair maiden herself. For some reason, she would take it to tavern and with the pineapples and her knife, carve into the pineapple. And he sat next to her, not saying a word. And instead of feeling threatened by the man, she felt at ease. The same feeling she got while she was at sea, when she looked into his blue eyes. She looked down with a smile and gave him a slice of the pineapple. The nectar hit his tongue like a symphony. He looked and smiled. Now these shenanigans went on. Sometimes it would be weeks at a time before she'd be back at that Pacific outpost. But he would go back when he could. Until he got noticed. One night he gets ready to go to the shore to meet the Fur Maiden. He was approached by two guards, and his father was there in lieu. Son, you have dishonored me. You have gone about all against all our traditions. You have put us all in danger, and worse, it's become an addiction. You come back smelling of land fruits, and this is not something I can ignore. Father, I'm just curious. I'm half them. You are half I as well. And you'll respect my place and respect your kingdom. I forbid it. You'll no longer go to the land where the land walkers are. You will stay here behind the walls of our city, and you will never leave. As such, Fenton rebelled. No! My man's my own fate, and I will do what I wish, with or without your permission. This angered Poseidon right to his core. And as such, at that point, he took up arms, his trident, and he aimed it at Fenton.
My son, I will ensure that you do stay on land. For it's my duty to ensure that this undergrowth shall remain protected.
At that point, he took his trident. He began to amass an energy like no other around Fenton, and he began to incant an ungodly notion. At that point, Fenton began to crinkle and crunkle, his spine cracking. Father, no! But it was too late. The incantus was already done. And he began to shrink, his hands changing to hooves, his nose protruding to what looked like an all manner of creature he'd never seen. His belly began to bloat and bloat, but as he shrunk, his bones collapsing in. Father, please, no! That was it. And without any notion, his father turned his back on him, and he said, "You're no longer my son. You gorge yourself on the lands, and you will gorge yourself like a pig." At that point, his ability to breathe, the natural air within the ocean stopped, and he could no longer breathe, and he scuttled his way, pedaling as fast as his hooves could take him, up and up and up, until he made it to the air. It was at that point he knew that there was no going back. He managed to allure himself onto a piece of shrapnel from a ship, wading himself in the water, as he finally made himself berth on one of the outposts. He'd been to this outpost many times, many times, and as such, at that point, he would look around, trying to gain something in familiarity. He would scamper by on scuppers, forgetting leftovers on the floor by the bystanders. Until one day, an aroma hit the port. It was her, his bonny lass. He scuttled over, and she looked down, and she kicked him as she moved away with her pineapples and went into the dock. She went to the same tavern, and once again, he was there, staring. She lifted a dagger and pointed at him, and he scarpered away. She then left and never returned to that port. She went on to make a bigger reputation for herself as one of the strongest pirate captains to have ever sailed the seven seas, under the name of Anne Bonny. But that's when it happened. As Fenton wasn't alone that day. No. There was someone always in the shadows, always at the same port, who went and saw these peculiarities occur. Even so, Fentidimus change from merman to man, to the pig that he was. I walked outside the tavern that night, for I'd seen all the comings and goings of Fentidimus, and what happened between Anne Bonny. I stood outside the tavern. Rain was pouring in, and little Fentidimus was there shaking. He looked up to me with his blue eyes. I looked down. A fall from grace, young prince. He squealed, as if I knew that I understood who he was. I took out my pocket and undid a small little bag. It was dried pineapple, and I placed it down between. He scarpered it up, and you could see he began to relax. He felt some familiarity as he scarpered down the last bit of pineapple. I put my hat on his head, and he looked up once more, and I said, "Shall we?" And he put up himself, started to trot as we walked towards the jetty. And as such, that is the story of Fentidimus. Now, Fentidimus would go on very many journeys with me. The name would grow tiresome among the crew. He would then become the name Fenton. And when I was off on my endeavours on shore, he would be the first mate. In standing, he gained the name Captain Fenton among the crew. And still to this day, you can find him on a certain island, craving certain pineapples, waiting to be picked up by a certain crew. And maybe, even one day, the curse will come undone. And Anne Bonny may realise that that faithful pig that she kicked that night was the lover that she lost, that left a scar on her soul. Guys, I'm Captain Jack, aka Rob Raven. You can catch me streaming on Twitch every Wednesday and Friday as Jack, or Monday, Wednesday, and I get that wrong. You can catch me every Wednesday and Friday as Jack. Every Monday, bugger it, I'm on Twitch. Go and check it, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you there.